The maitre d' at Le Jardin, San Francisco's most coveted Michelin-starred restaurant, didn't even try to hide his sneer. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we maintain a certain atmosphere here," he said, his eyes flicking disdainfully to where my fingers were laced with quins across the marble counter. The words hung in the air like a slap, and in that split second, with the soft glow of crystal chandeliers illuminating the curious faces of the elite diners behind him, I felt the old shame I'd buried for a decade claw its way back up my throat. But this time, I wasn't the scared college kid anymore. This time, I would make them all regret it. Quinn squeezed my hand harder, her green eyes flashing with hurt but also that quiet strength I'd fallen for all over again 5 years ago. "Let's just go, Kaya," she whispered, but I could hear the tremor in her voice, the same tremor I'd caused once before when I had chosen fear over her. "No, not this time." I straightened my shoulders, the tailored blazer I'd worn for our anniversary feeling like armor now. "Actually, we'll be staying," I said calmly, pulling out my phone right there in the lobby. The maitre d' laughed softly, turning away as if we were already ghosts. He had no idea who I was, or who I had become. Outside on the bustling streets of downtown San Francisco, the cool evening air did little to calm the fire in my veins. Quinn walked beside me, silent for the first few blocks, her hand now limp in mine. "Kaya, maybe it's not worth it," she said finally, her voice barely above the hum of traffic. But I stopped under the neon glow of a street lamp, turning to face her. "It is worth it. Because it's not just about tonight. It's about every time I let fear win. Including the time I let you go." Her eyes searched mine, and I could see the old wound flickering there. The one we'd both tried to heal but never fully closed. Back in our loft apartment overlooking the bay, I paced the living room while Quinn sketched quietly on the couch, her way of processing. My company, Thompson Ventures, had been eyeing Le Jardin for months as a potential investment target. The owner, Victor Lang, was an old-school chef turned magnate with restaurants across California. Little did he know my team had already been in talks for a minority stake. "Call the team," I texted my assistant. "Accelerate the deal. 30% by next week." As I typed, the flashback deepened. After the breakup, Quinn had left Harvard, transferring to a smaller art school in New York. I threw myself into classes, dated a guy from my econ class for cover, even brought him home for Thanksgiving to sell the lie. My parents praised me, the farm thriving with the money I sent. But at night alone I'd stare at the photo of Quinn I kept hidden in my phone case, the one from our last picnic. The guilt had eaten at me for years, but I pushed it down, building walls of success. Until that charity gala 3 years ago. Quinn was there as a featured artist, her paintings of strong women in love drawing crowds. When our eyes met across the room, it was like no time had passed. "Kaya," she had said, her voice soft. We talked for hours that night and slowly, painfully we started over. I told her everything, the pressure, the fear, the regret. She forgave me, but now, with this incident, I wondered if the forgiveness had limits. By the time the sun rose over the bay, my team had confirmed the deal was close. But I didn't know then that buying my way back in would open the floodgates to a secret that would threaten everything. The city felt different that morning, sharper, as if the streets themselves were watching. I drove to the office with the radio off, my mind replaying the maitre d's sneer on loop. Thompson Ventures occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek financial district tower, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed power. My assistant, Marcus, was already waiting with fresh coffee and the preliminary contracts. "Victor Lang is nervous about the investor group," he said, sliding the folder across my desk. "He thinks it's some tech bro consortium. No idea it's you." I smiled tightly, signing page after page. 30%. Enough to force change. Enough to make them listen. But as the ink dried, my phone lit up with a notification from an old college group chat. Someone had posted an old video. "Look who came out after all these years," the caption read. It was grainy footage from that party 10 years ago. Me pushing Quinn away, my voice clear as I denied everything. How had it surfaced now? My stomach dropped. The timing was too perfect. Victor Lang must have connections to my past through my father. They had met at some industry event years ago. The video was spreading fast on social media, tagged with hypocrite Kaya. Quinn called me minutes later. "Kaya, it's everywhere. People are saying you used me back then." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the pain. We need to talk. The confrontation was coming, and with it, the chain of events that would force me to face the moral storm I'd created. I hung up staring out at the bay, knowing the past I had buried so deep was rising like a tide, ready to drown us both. The next 48 hours blurred into a storm of conference calls and legal reviews. I sat in the glass-walled boardroom, watching my team negotiate the final terms with Victor Lang's lawyers via video. The investor group demands immediate policy changes regarding inclusivity, my lead attorney stated coolly. Victor's face on the screen tightened, but he agreed. 30% stake transferred at close of business. I owned part of the very place that had turned us away. Quinn stayed home that day, her sketches abandoned on the kitchen island. When I finally walked through the door that evening, she was waiting on the couch, the viral video paused on her laptop. Explain it to me again, she said quietly. Not the version you told me 3 years ago. The real one. I sat across from her, the weight of the decade pressing down. The video had exploded overnight, thousands of comments calling me a traitor to the community. Old classmates resurfacing with stories of how I had distanced myself from anyone who knew about us. My parents threatened to cut me off completely. I started voice cracking for the first time in years. No tuition, no support, nothing. I was 22 and terrified. I thought if I just buried it, I could survive. Quinn listened without interrupting, her fingers tracing the edge of her sketchpad. But when I finished, she stood up. You didn't just bury it, Kaya. You buried me. In front of everyone. The words stung because they were true. That night in Boston after the party, I had watched from my dorm window as she walked away into the rain. I had convinced myself it was protection for both of us. Now the protection had crumbled. The following morning, I returned to Le Jardin as the new co-owner. The same maitre d' greeted me at the door, his face pale when I handed him the ownership papers. Miss Thompson. We had no idea. I kept my voice even. Table for two. The best one. And from now on, every couple is welcome here. No exceptions. He nodded quickly, escorting us inside. Quinn sat across from me at the window table overlooking the bay, candlelight flickering between us. For a moment it felt like victory. But my phone kept buzzing, messages from my father, from old friends, from strangers. The video had reached Ohio. How could you embarrass the family like this? My father's text read. I silenced the phone, reaching for Quinn's hand across the table. This is our life now, I said. No more hiding. She squeezed back, but the shadow in her eyes remained. That afternoon, the backlash intensified. A local LGBT advocacy group demanded a public statement from me. Victor Lang called personally, furious. You bought your way in to settle a grudge? He snapped. The culinary world is small, Kaya. This will ruin your reputation. I hung up, staring at the contract on my desk. The secret was no longer mine alone. Old roommates from Harvard began posting their own accounts. How I had avoided Quinn's calls. How I had changed my social media overnight. The guilt I had carried in silence now played out publicly, layer after layer peeling back. Quinn met me at the office after her studio shift, her paint-splattered jeans a stark contrast to the corporate surroundings. People are asking me if I knew, she said, leaning against the window. If I was part of the lie. I pulled her into my arms, the city lights starting to twinkle below. You weren't. I was. And now I have to fix it. But fixing it meant more than ownership papers. It meant facing the woman I had hurt most, and the family that had forced the choice. The chain of confrontations was only beginning. The video reached 1 million views by the end of the week. My inbox flooded with interview requests, some supportive, most accusatory. I stood in the Le Jardin kitchen during a private tour, watching the chefs move with precision while Victor Lang hovered nearby, his arms crossed. You think throwing money at this erases what you did? He muttered under his breath. I turned to face him. No. But it changes what happens next. That evening, Quinn and I hosted a small gathering at our loft. Close friends from the LGBT community. A few of my venture partners. The conversation turned raw quickly. You denied her publicly, Kaya, one friend said, glass of wine in hand. Now you're the hero because you bought a restaurant? Quinn stayed quiet beside me, but I felt her tension. Later, alone on the balcony, she finally spoke. The video brought it all back. The way you looked at me that night, like I was nothing. Tears stung my eyes. You were everything. I was just too weak to fight for it. The next morning brought the first direct confrontation with my past. My mother called from Ohio, her voice trembling over speakerphone. Your father is devastated. The church group saw the video. How could you do this to us? I gripped the counter, Quinn standing silently in the doorway. I did what you asked, Mom. I ended it. And it almost destroyed me. The call ended in silence. Victor Lang scheduled an emergency board meeting for the restaurant group, demanding I step back from the stake. I refused. Instead, I used my 30% to push through new training protocols on inclusivity. The culinary world buzzed, food bloggers, critics, rival owners all weighing in. Is this redemption or revenge? One headline read. Quinn and I drove to her studio that afternoon, the bay sparkling under clear skies. She worked on a new painting, two women holding hands against a storm. This is us, she said softly, brush in hand. But as I watched her paint, another layer of the past surfaced. During our second chance 3 years ago, I had promised her honesty. Yet I had never told her the full truth. My father had not just threatened money. He had threatened to expose her scholarship details to the school, claiming moral issues. I had protected her by sacrificing us. Now, with everything public, that protection felt like another betrayal. She turned to me, paint on her cheek. Whatever comes next, we face it together. I nodded, but inside the guilt twisted deeper. The deal had given me power, but the secret had given the world ammunition. And the next confrontation was already at our door. The backlash hit like a wave. My father flew out unannounced, arriving at our loft with the same stern expression I remembered from childhood. You owe this family an apology, he said the moment the door closed. Quinn stood beside me, arms crossed. She owes you nothing, she replied evenly. The argument escalated quickly. Old accusations of selfishness, new ones of hypocrisy. You hid who you were to protect us, my father shouted. Now you're dragging our name through the mud for some restaurant stunt. I finally broke. I hid because you made me choose between love and survival. And I chose wrong. He left without another word, the door slamming behind him. Quinn pulled me into her arms afterward, but the damage lingered. Social media turned vicious. Hashtags like Kaya Betrayed trended, with screenshots of the old video side by side with photos of us at Le Jardin now. An old roommate from Harvard went live, detailing how I had ignored Quinn's messages for months after the breakup. Quinn read the comments late one night, her face pale. They think I was weak for taking you back. I shut the laptop. You were strong. I was the coward. The next day, the LGBT advocacy group organized a protest outside Le Jardin. I went down myself, standing with them, microphone in hand. I made a mistake 10 years ago out of fear, I said publicly for the first time. I hurt the woman I love. But I'm here now, changing the place that hurt us both. The crowd murmured, some clapping, others skeptical. Victor Lang watched from inside, furious. That evening, Quinn and I sat on the roof, city lights spread below. The guilt never left me, I admitted. Every success felt hollow because I built it on a lie. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Then stopped carrying it alone. But the moral storm wasn't over. My board at Thompson Ventures called an emergency session. Investors worried the controversy would tank deals. I defended my actions, but the doubt in their eyes mirrored my own. The chain of confrontations had exposed every crack in my life, and redemption felt further away than ever. Yet in Quinn's steady gaze, I saw the reason to keep fighting. Isolation settled in like fog over the bay. I canceled meetings, working from home while the world dissected my past. Quinn went to her studio every morning, giving me space I hadn't asked for but desperately needed. Alone in the loft, I replayed memories I had locked away. The nights after the breakup when I would drive to the Charles River alone, sitting where we had shared our first kiss, whispering apologies to the water. The guilt had shaped me, pushing me to succeed so hard that failure was never an option. Now it threatened to undo everything. An old friend from Harvard, someone who had known us both, texted, "You owe her more than ownership papers, Kaya." The message stung because it was true. I drove to Quinn's studio one rainy afternoon, finding her staring at the finished painting of the two women in the storm. "I can't keep pretending the past doesn't matter," she said when I walked in. We sat on the floor amid brushes and canvases, talking for hours. I told her about the scholarship threat my father had made, the detail I had hidden even during our second chance. I thought protecting you meant losing you, I whispered. Tears fell freely now. Quinn took my hands. It almost did. But we're here. The conversation cracked something open inside me, the late awakening I had avoided for so long. I realized the real redemption wasn't buying a restaurant. It was standing in the truth no matter the cost. That night, I drafted a full public apology video. No corporate spin, just raw honesty. I posted it at midnight, watching the views climb. Responses poured in, some healing, some still angry. My mother called the next day, softer than before. Your father is thinking. Give him time. The culinary world remained divided. Several chefs reached out privately, sharing their own stories of hidden lives. Victor Lang finally agreed to a meeting. You forced change, he admitted reluctantly. But the damage to my reputation. I offered to fund a new inclusivity initiative across his restaurants. He accepted. The painful journey had forced me to see. The secret had never been just mine. It belonged to everyone I had hurt along the way. The public apology shifted everything. Thompson Ventures closed 3 new deals that week, investors citing my honesty as strength. Le Jardin hosted its first official LGBT night, the dining room full of couples who had once been turned away. Quinn and I stood at the entrance, hands linked openly. Victor Lang shook my hand stiffly. You won, he said. But winning wasn't the point. Healing was. I flew to Ohio the following weekend, facing my father on the family porch. I love her, I said simply. And I love you. But I won't choose anymore. He nodded slowly, the first crack in years. Come home sometime. Both of you. The words weren't perfect, but they were a start. Back in San Francisco, Quinn and I walked the Golden Gate Bridge at sunset, the same spot from our early dates after reconnecting. You fought for us, she said, wind tugging her hair. I stopped, turning to face her. I should have fought 10 years ago. But I'm fighting now, every day. We embraced there, the city lights beginning to sparkle below, the pain of the past finally loosening its grip. The restaurant incident, the viral video, the confrontations, they had all led here to this quiet redemption. I had lost years to fear, but I had gained the courage to never hide again. Was redemption possible when the scars of denial ran this deep? Or does love demand a price too high to pay?